Okay, so I have a confession. I've been learning Spanish for 2 years, and I can read pretty well. I can write emails, but the second someone speaks to me at normal speed, total brain freeze. It's like they're speaking a completely different language.
That's actually the perfect way to describe it, because in a sense, they are. The Spanish you learned from textbooks and the Spanish that comes out of native speakers' mouths are operating on two different phonetic systems. And here's the thing. This isn't a Spanish problem or an Alex problem. It's a fundamental gap in how we teach listening comprehension.
So today, we're diving into something that affects pretty much every language learner. Why native speakers sound incomprehensible, and more importantly, what you can actually do about it. We're talking about the hidden code behind fast speech.
And I love this topic because it's one of those areas where a little bit of explicit knowledge, understanding the actual patterns, can save you literally hundreds of hours of confused listening. We're going to break down the phonetic processes that make speech sound fast, the psychological barriers that make your brain freeze up, and then give you a practical system you can start using today.
We're also going to talk about why your current approach, just listening more and hoping it clicks, probably isn't working, and what professional interpreters do instead. Plus, we've got a specific daily practice routine that takes less time than your morning coffee. The big idea here is that listening comprehension isn't magic, and it's not about talent. It's a skill with a learnable structure. Once you understand how native speech actually works, you can train your brain to process it. So let's crack the code.
All right, so I've been testing something for the past 3 weeks. I recorded myself having casual conversations with native English speakers, then slowed down the audio to 0.5x speed. And what I found was genuinely shocking. The words I thought I was hearing weren't actually the words being said, like at all.
Oh, this is the phonetic breakdown experiment you mentioned. What did you discover?
So here's the thing. When someone asks, "What are you doing?" they're not actually saying those 4 separate words. It comes out as, "What you doing?" It's literally a different sound pattern. And this isn't sloppy speech. This is how native speakers are designed to communicate efficiently.
Right, and there's actual linguistic science behind this. It's called connected speech, and it follows what linguists call the principle of least effort. Basically, our mouths are lazy, in the best possible way. We naturally minimize movement when we talk.
Wait, so this is a feature, not a bug? Native speakers are actively trying to do less work when they speak?
Precisely. Think about it from an optimization standpoint. If you had to fully articulate every single phoneme in a conversation, you'd burn way more energy and speak way slower. So our brains evolved a shortcut system. The research shows that native speakers connect words into what sounds like a single long sound. What you doing? Or even "jeet yet" for "did you eat yet?"
Okay, but here's what I don't get. If I'm learning English and I'm taught to say, "What are you doing?" with clear pronunciation, I'm essentially learning a version of English that doesn't exist in real conversation. That's a massive inefficiency in the learning process.
You've just identified the core problem with traditional language education. They teach you the citation form, how words appear in a dictionary, but not the connected speech form that people actually use. It's like learning to drive on a closed course and then being thrown onto a highway.
So what's the actual mechanism here? How do these sounds merge together?
Let me break down the 2 main processes. First, there's what's called catenation. That's when the final consonant of one word links to the initial vowel of the next word. So an apple becomes an apple because that N sound jumps over to connect with the A. Your mouth is literally creating a bridge between words.
That explains why "turn it off" sounds like "turn it off" when people say it quickly.
Correct, but here's where it gets even more interesting. The second process is elision,
which is the complete loss of a phoneme. The research shows that sounds like the T in next day or I don't know often disappear entirely, not reduced, gone. So next day becomes next day, and I don't know becomes I don't know.
Hold on, so when I'm listening to fast English and I feel like I'm missing sounds, I'm not actually missing them. They were never pronounced in the first place. That's the revelation. The T and D sounds are the most commonly elided phonemes because they require the most tongue movement. Your tongue has to touch the roof of your mouth, which takes time and energy. So in rapid speech, native speakers just skip it. It's pure efficiency. This is wild. So if I'm trying to understand fast English, I shouldn't be listening for every sound I learned in textbooks. I should be listening for this reduced, connected version. Now you're getting it. But there's one more layer to this. English is what's called a stress-timed language. That means we don't give equal weight to every syllable. The vowel sounds in unstressed syllables get reduced to what's called a weak form, or schwa, that sound. So to becomes ta, for becomes fur, and becomes und. So in a sentence like, I want to go to the store, almost every small word is getting reduced? Yes, it would actually sound more like, I want to go to the store. And here's the kicker. If you pronounced it the proper way with full vowels, you'd sound robotic to native speakers. The reduced forms are the natural forms. Okay, so let me test my understanding with a practical example. If someone says, I'm going to meet you at the restaurant, what's actually coming out of their mouth? Great test case. In natural speech, that would be, I'm going to meet you at the restaurant. The going to contracts to gonna. The meet you connects into meetcha through catenation, and the reduces to the. 3 different phonetic processes in one sentence. And this is happening in every single sentence native speakers produce. In casual conversation? Absolutely. The faster the speech, the more aggressive these reductions become. That's why podcast interviews at 1.5x speed feel impossible. You're compounding the natural reductions with artificial speed. So here's my question. If I want to actually understand fast English, do I need to memorize all these reduction patterns? Because that sounds like a massive undertaking. Here's where the optimization mindset comes in. You don't need to memorize every possible reduction. You need to understand the system. Once you know that T and D are likely to disappear between words, that going to always becomes gonna, that unstressed vowels turn into schwas, you can predict what you're going to hear. Okay, so it's pattern recognition, not memorization. Correct. And here's the efficiency hack. These patterns are consistent. Native speakers aren't randomly choosing when to reduce sounds. They're following the principle of least effort every single time. So if you can identify the high-frequency reduction patterns, the ones that appear in 80% of casual speech, you've solved the majority of the comprehension problem. What are those high-frequency patterns? Give me the minimum effective dose here. All right, here's your starter pack. 1, going to always becomes gonna. 2, want to becomes wanna. 3, got to becomes gotta. 4, any T or D between consonants disappears. Next day becomes next day. 5, and reduces to und or even just n. Bread and butter becomes bread and butter. 6, the before a consonant becomes the. Before a vowel becomes the. So if I just trained my ear to recognize those 6 patterns, I'd immediately understand a huge chunk of fast English. You'd probably jump from understanding 40% to understanding 70% of casual conversation, because those patterns appear constantly. Every single conversation has multiple instances of gonna, wanna, reduced the, elided T sounds. This is the kind of leverage I'm talking about. Instead of spending months doing generic listening practice, you could spend a week drilling these specific patterns and get exponentially better results. And here's the beautiful part. Once you understand the phonetic code, you can re-engineer it. You can start speaking with these reductions yourself, which makes you sound more natural and actually helps your listening comprehension because you're producing the same patterns you need to recognize. Wait, so speaking with reductions improves listening comprehension? How does that work? It's a neurological feedback loop. When you physically produce a sound pattern with your own mouth, your brain creates a stronger neural pathway for recognizing that pattern when you hear it. It's the same reason musicians can hear details in music that non-musicians miss. They've trained their motor cortex and auditory cortex simultaneously. So the fastest way to understand fast English isn't just listening. It's listening and speaking with the same reductions. Now you're thinking like a linguist. But here's the thing most people get wrong. They try to speak with reductions before they understand the patterns. That's backwards. You need to decode the system first, understand why what are you doing becomes what you're doing, and then practice producing it yourself. Because if you just mimic sounds without understanding the underlying phonetic rules, you're not building a transferable skill. Right, you're just doing impressions. But when you understand that it's catenation causing the T and Y to merge into a ch sound, you can apply that rule to any similar combination. Won't you becomes won'tcha. Don't you becomes don'tcha. Same pattern, infinite applications. Alright, so let me make sure I've got the framework right. Step 1, understand the three main processes: catenation, elision, and vowel reduction. Step 2, identify the high-frequency patterns where these processes appear. Step 3, train your ear to recognize those patterns in real speech. Step 4, practice producing those patterns yourself to reinforce the neural pathways. That's the system. And the ROI on this is insane because you're not just improving comprehension, you're also improving your speaking fluency, your accent, and your confidence in conversations. It's a 4-for-1 optimization. But here's what I'm curious about. Does this work for all English accents? Because American English, British English, Australian English all sound different. Great question. The core processes, catenation, elision, vowel reduction, are universal across all English accents because they're based on the principle of least effort, which is a human universal. But the specific patterns vary. British English tends to drop more R sounds. American English reduces T to a flap sound between vowels, like water becomes waiter. So the framework is universal, but the implementation details change based on accent. Precisely. Which means once you understand the system, you can adapt it to any accent. You're not starting from zero each time. You're just adjusting the parameters. This is making me rethink everything about language learning efficiency. Most people spend hundreds of hours doing passive listening, hoping their brain will magically figure out these patterns. But if you just study the phonetic code for a few hours, you can decode what you're hearing immediately. That's the difference between implicit learning and explicit learning. Implicit learning, just listening a lot, works eventually, but it's incredibly slow. Explicit learning, understanding the rules first, gives you a massive head start. You're not waiting for your brain to discover the patterns. You're teaching it the patterns directly. And this is where most language courses fail, right? They focus on vocabulary and grammar, but completely ignore the phonetic layer. It's the missing piece. You can know 10,000 words and have perfect grammar, but if you don't understand connected speech, you'll still struggle to understand native speakers in real conversations. It's like having a powerful engine, but no transmission. The power can't actually reach the wheels. So if someone's listening to this right now and thinking, I've been studying English for years, but still can't understand movies or podcasts, this is probably why. They never learned the phonetic code. And the good news is, it's not too late. You can learn these patterns at any stage. In fact, having a strong vocabulary and grammar foundation makes it easier, because you can focus purely on the phonetic layer without worrying about meaning.
Okay, so here is something I tested on myself that completely changed how I approach fast English. I was watching a British panel show, you know, the kind where everyone talks over each other at lightning speed, and I noticed something weird. When I tried to catch every single word, I understood maybe 30%. But when I just
relaxed and let my brain do its thing, suddenly I was getting 70, 80% of what was happening. It felt like magic, but there's actual science behind why that works.
That's the translation trap in action. And the numbers here are brutal. Your working memory can only hold information for about 15 to 20 seconds without rehearsal, and it can only process roughly 3 to 4 items simultaneously. So if you're trying to translate word for word while someone's speaking at native speed, you're asking your brain to do something it literally cannot do. By the time you've processed one word, the speaker is already 5 words ahead. You're not failing, you're just using the wrong strategy.
It's like trying to read every line of code in a program while it's running. You can't. You need to understand the pattern, not every individual instruction. But here's what messed with my head. I thought I was being lazy by not translating everything. Turns out, native speakers don't catch every single word either. They rely on context, tone, and keywords to fill in the gaps. So when I stopped trying to be perfect, I actually got better results.
Right, because you lowered your cognitive load. Think of your brain like a computer processor. When you're translating, you're running 2 programs at once, understanding English and converting it to your native language. That's double the processing power for the same information. No wonder your brain freezes. But there's another layer to this that's even more insidious, the emotional component.
The affective filter hypothesis. I love this one because it explains why some people can be in an English-speaking country for years and barely improve, while others pick it up in months. It's not about intelligence or talent.
Correct. The hypothesis, developed by linguist Stephen Krashen, posits that high anxiety and low self-confidence create a mental block that prevents input from reaching the brain's language acquisition device. It's not metaphorical. It's a real psychological barrier. When you're stressed about understanding every word, your brain literally can't process the language effectively. The filter goes up and comprehension goes down.
So here's the experiment I ran. For 1 week, I watched content where I knew I'd only understand maybe 60, 70%. Podcasts, TV shows, whatever. But I made one rule. No pausing, no rewinding, no looking up words. Just stay calm and keep going. First day, brutal. I felt like I was drowning. But by day 3, something clicked. My brain started recognizing patterns without me consciously trying. By day 7, I was understanding way more than I thought I would.
That's your brain's pattern recognition system kicking in. When you're not overloading it with translation tasks and anxiety, it can actually do what it's designed to do. Find patterns, make predictions, fill in gaps. It's the same system that lets you understand someone speaking in a noisy room or finish someone's sentence. You're not processing every phoneme, you're predicting based on context. But I want to be clear about something. This felt uncomfortable, really uncomfortable. There were moments where I had no idea what was happening, and every instinct told me to pause and translate. The key was trusting that my brain was still working even when I couldn't consciously track it. It's like when you're learning to ride a bike. At some point, you have to let go of the conscious control and trust your balance system.
And that's where most learners get stuck.
They think confusion equals failure, so they retreat to slower content or translation, but confusion is actually part of the process. Your brain needs to experience that discomfort to build new neural pathways. The trick is managing the anxiety so it doesn't trigger the affective filter. You want to be challenged, not panicked. So what's the practical takeaway here? If someone's listening to this and thinking, okay, I get it, but what do I actually do differently tomorrow? What's the minimum effective dose? First, stop translating. I know that sounds obvious, but you need to actively catch yourself doing it and redirect. When you hear English, try to visualize the concept or action, not the word in your native language. Second, lower the stakes. Pick content where you don't need to understand everything. Entertainment, not lectures. That reduces anxiety. And third, give yourself permission to miss stuff. Native speakers miss stuff all the time. They just don't panic about it. Track your emotional state, not just your comprehension. If you notice your shoulders tensing up or your jaw clenching while listening, that's your affective filter rising. Take a breath, remind yourself that confusion is temporary, and keep going. The goal isn't perfect understanding, it's staying calm enough for your brain to do its job.
All right, so here's where things get mathematically beautiful. There's this principle called Zipf's law, and it's basically the Pareto principle on steroids for language. Emma, you've been geeking out about this one.
I have, because the numbers are wild. Zipf's law shows that the top 100 words in English cover about 50% of all spoken text. The top 1,000 words, roughly 80%. So if you're trying to understand fast English, you don't need to catch every single word. You need to catch the right words.
Which means most of what native speakers say is noise, not literally, but in terms of information density. The question is, how do you train your brain to filter for signal?
This is where the content words versus function words distinction becomes your superpower. Content words, nouns, verbs, adjectives, carry the actual meaning. Function words, articles, prepositions, conjunctions, are grammatical glue. Take this sentence. I was kind of tired yesterday, but I went out with my friends. The key words are tired, yesterday, went out, friends. Everything else? Filler.
Your brain already does this in your native language. You don't consciously process every the and a and bud. You skim for meaning. We need to train that same skill in English. I call it the keyword extraction exercise.
Walk me through it.
How do you actually practice this? Simple. Take any podcast or YouTube video, something at native speed. Play a 30-second clip. Don't try to understand everything. Just write down the content words you catch. Nouns, verbs, adjectives. Ignore the rest. Then replay it and see if you can reconstruct the meaning from just those key words.
So you're essentially reverse engineering comprehension. You're proving to yourself that you don't need 100% of the words to get 80% of the meaning.
Yes, and here's where it gets even better. Context does half the work for you. If the topic is food and you hear something muffled that sounds like "la" or "duh," your brain will correctly guess lunch or dinner, even if the sound isn't clear. Context fills the gaps. This is what I love about this approach. It's not about training your ears to be superhuman. It's about training your brain to be efficient. You're leveraging probability and pattern recognition. Right, and the ROI here is massive. Instead of spending months trying to hear every syllable perfectly, you spend weeks training your brain to extract keywords and use context. The result? You understand conversations faster with less cognitive load. Okay, but let's get tactical. What's the minimum effective dose? How often do you need to do this keyword extraction exercise to see results? I tested this on myself. 10 minutes a day, 5 days a week. Within 2 weeks, I noticed I was catching more in real conversations. Within a month, I could follow podcasts at 1.5x speed without subtitles. The key is consistency, not volume. And the beauty of this is it's self-reinforcing. The more you practice extracting keywords, the better your brain gets at predicting what's coming next. You're building a mental model of how English sentences are structured.
All right, so we've talked about why native speakers sound fast. Now let's get tactical. There's this training method that interpreters use, people who translate in real time at the UN, and it's called shadowing. Emma, you've been testing this for the past month, right?
I have, and honestly, it felt ridiculous at first, like genuinely embarrassing. But the data is wild. There was this study where they took learners and had them shadow for just a few weeks. Their listening comprehension scores jumped from 59% to 71%. That's a 12 percentage point gain from what's essentially advanced karaoke.
Advanced karaoke. I love that. But let's break down what shadowing actually is, because most people think it's just repeating words. It's not. You're not a parrot. You're trying to become a mirror.
You take a 10 to 15 second clip of native English, could be from a podcast, a TV show, whatever, and you play it. Then immediately you try to repeat it in the same way. Not just the words, but the speed, the rhythm, the intonation. You're copying the entire sound signature. And that 10 to 15 second window is critical. Why not just shadow a whole TED Talk? Because your working memory can't handle it. There's this thing in cognitive psychology called the phonological loop. It's the part of your brain that holds sounds temporarily while you process them. When you vocalize what you hear, you're essentially rehearsing it in that loop, which strengthens both your auditory memory and your ability to produce those sounds. But the loop has limits. Go longer than 15 seconds and you're just guessing at the end.
So it's like interval training for your ears and mouth. Short bursts, maximum intensity. What does this look like in practice? Walk me through your actual setup.
Okay, so I use my phone. I'll find a clip. Let's say it's a news anchor saying something like, "The committee announced the results earlier today." I play it once just to hear it. Then I play it again and try to shadow it in real time, speaking along with the audio. At first, I'm always behind. The native speaker is already 3 words ahead while I'm still processing the first one.
That lag is the whole problem we're trying to solve, right? Your brain is still decoding while they've moved on.
Yes, but here's where it gets interesting. After a few repetitions, something clicks. You stop translating in your head. You start just producing the sounds. It's almost automatic. And that's when you know the phonological loop is doing its job.
Now, you mentioned you added a layer to this, recording yourself. Why?
Because self-perception is terrible. I thought I was nailing it, but when I recorded myself and compared it to the original, I realized I was missing all the connected speech. Like announced the was coming out as 3 separate words instead of announced the as one fluid sound. Recording forces you to hear the gap between what you think you're doing and what you're actually doing.
That's brutal but necessary. So the full protocol is 10 to 15 second clip, shadow it multiple times until you can match the rhythm, then record yourself and compare. How many reps are we talking per clip?
I'd say 5 to 10. The first few are rough. By rep 5, you're getting close. By rep 10, you should be able to do it without the audio playing, just for memory. That's when you know it's locked in.
And how many clips per day? Because I can already hear people thinking, great, another thing to add to my routine.
3 clips, that's it. 3 10-second clips, 5 to 10 reps each. You're looking at maybe 15 minutes total. The ROI is insane. 15 minutes a day for a 12-point jump in comprehension, that's the kind of efficiency we're after.
Okay, but let's talk failure modes. What are the common mistakes people make when they try this?
Biggest one, picking clips that are too hard. If you're a beginner and you try to shadow a fast-talking comedian, you're just going to get frustrated. Start with news anchors or audiobook narrators, people who speak clearly. You can level up later.
What about accent? Does it matter if you're shadowing British English versus American English?
Not really. The goal isn't to adopt a specific accent. It's to train your ear and mouth to handle fast connected speech. Whether that's British or American, the underlying mechanics are the same. Though I will say, pick one and stick with it for consistency.
Okay, so we've talked about the mechanics of fast English, but here's where most people completely waste their time. And I mean literally throw hours down the drain. They think they're practicing by having English podcasts playing in the background while they cook, or Netflix on while they scroll their phone. That's not practice. That's just noise.
The data backs this up hard. Active listening, where you're actually writing down words, pausing to repeat, engaging with the content, is significantly more effective than passive background listening. It's not even close. And yet, I see people doing the passive thing for hours and wondering why they're not improving.
It's the classic trap of confusing time spent with actual work done. You could have English playing in the background for 8 hours a day and get less benefit than 15 minutes of focused, active practice. The ROI is completely inverted. So let's talk about what actually works. I tested this myself for 6 weeks, and the results were kind of shocking. The minimum effective dose for listening improvement is 10 to 15 minutes a day. That's it. But it has to be structured. Walk me through your protocol. What does those 15 minutes look like? First, pick one short video. I'm talking 3 to 5 minutes max. Watch it once with subtitles, then immediately watch it again without subtitles. Then pick one sentence and shadow it. Repeat it out loud, matching the rhythm and speed. That's the whole system. Do that daily and you'll see massive gains in a few weeks. The key word there is daily. This isn't about marathon sessions on weekends. It's about consistency. 15 minutes every single day beats 3 hours once a week, every time. And here's where it gets interesting. The repetition effect. The first time you listen to something, it feels impossible. The second time you catch maybe 60%.
You know what strikes me most about this whole conversation? We started by thinking the problem was our ears, like we just needed to listen harder. But it turns out the real breakthrough is understanding that native speakers are literally speaking a different version of English than what we were taught.
Yes. And once you see the code, once you realize there are actual patterns governing how sounds merge and disappear, it stops feeling like magic and starts feeling like a skill you can deliberately practice. That shift from passive hoping to active training is everything.
So if someone's listening right now and thinking, okay, I'm convinced, what do I actually do tomorrow morning? What's the minimum effective dose here?
Pick one piece of content you genuinely enjoy, a YouTube video, a podcast clip, whatever, and commit to 15 minutes of active practice. Watch it with subtitles first to catch the key words, then without to train your prediction skills, then shadow one sentence until your mouth can produce what your ears are trying to recognize. That's it. That's the whole system.
And the psychological piece. Giving yourself permission to not catch everything, to relax into the confusion instead of fighting it. That might actually be harder than the technical training for a lot of people.
Every native speaker is also constantly missing words and filling in gaps from context. We're not asking you to develop superhuman hearing. We're asking you to do what fluent speakers already do, just more consciously at first.
I love that reframe. You're not trying to become perfect, you're trying to become normal. And the shadowing technique, that's your accelerator. It's like you're teaching your brain the rhythm and flow at the same time you're training your ears.
Right. And because speaking and listening share neural pathways, you're getting double the benefit from the same practice time. It's genuinely one of the most efficient language hacks I've ever encountered.
So here's my challenge to everyone listening. Try this system for 2 weeks. Just 2 weeks of 15-minute daily sessions. Track what happens, not just to your comprehension, but to your confidence. Because I think once you crack this code, everything else in English suddenly becomes accessible.
And if you want to go deeper, grab that graded reader PDF we mentioned. It's structured specifically to build these skills progressively. But honestly, the best material is whatever keeps you coming back every day. Consistency beats perfection every single time. Now go find something you love listening to, and let's rewire that brain.